Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are. Welcome. Thank you for being here for Black Men Read. We have a special guest this afternoon, and we're just really happy and honored that he is taking some time out of his busy schedule to be with us to talk about his current book, his life, his work, and any other passions and maybe some shenanigans in between. As a reminder, my name is Demetrius Frazier. I am the founder, executive director of Black Men Read, the organization, but I also am a member and admin for the book club. So if you're not a member of Black Men Read, the book club, check us out on Facebook. Black Men Read Now as the handle for all of our social media spaces. So Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We have a YouTube page, is what you're watching here. And if you wanted to connect with us and join us to volunteer, check us out on blackmenreadnow.com. One other thing, and we want to make sure that we do highlight this, especially as things are happening across America. Weather is impacting a lot of lives, and we want to just extend our love and our support for all of those, not only in the Southeast, but also all up and down the coast, especially in the Northeast as flooding is taking over. We just want to send our love and support, and hopefully things will get brighter and better in the near future. So tonight's guest, I have the honor and privilege of gushing over him for a little bit before he can even say a word, so I can make sure to embarrass him fully before we get to actually talking. But I do want to read a little bit of his bio. It's very impressive. We didn't want to do it too long because then he may just cut out and say that his Wi-Fi is not working. But Aaron Montgomery is our special guest, and he's the co-founder of CarLotz, a high-growth startup that is disrupting the used vehicle space. Prior to founding CarLotz, Aaron worked primarily in the automotive, warehouse automation, and wholesale distribution spaces, in general management roles. Aaron has had an impact not only in that space, but also serving as an adjunct professor at VCU, Virginia Commonwealth University, if you're not from the Richmond, Virginia area, and a speaker on simplifying complexity, lean startups, innovation, and entrepreneurship. Aaron holds an MBA from Harvard Business School and a degree in economics from Harvard as well. He was a finalist in Ernst & Young's Entrepreneur of the Year in 2015 and 2019. He's currently a board member for the United Way of Greater Richmond. So if that hasn't embarrassed him enough, we will do more as we talk, but please help me welcome our special guest, Aaron Montgomery.
Thank you so much for the warm welcome. I appreciate it.
You're lucky I don't know how to work this technology. I would have a bunch of
fireworks and
fireworks. We'd have the drum line kind of kicking up for you, but thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you doing this. Hopefully everything is well on your side of the camera.
Indeed, no complaints here. We're very blessed, so happy to be here.
Good. There's so many places we can start. I got some parts I want to talk about your bio. We're absolutely going to get into the book. And tonight's book topic is Suspend Your Disbelief. It's a really good book. I love the fact that you make me do homework in this book. So we'll talk about that in a second.
Very good.
But I do want to kind of give some space, because usually when we do these talks, we have the bio, we read that, and everybody gets familiar with those pieces. But we normally don't lend space to where you could talk about stuff that maybe doesn't hit that bio. That's good for the corporate endeavors. That's good for LinkedIn. But is there something about you that, hey, if they knew this about me, they would really know who I am?
I'll tell you, Demetrius, it's funny when you do this enough and you hear the bios, and as you said, it's for a corporate audience. It's for, hey, here's what I do. But when you strip it away, like I have like the most basic taste, the most basic preferences, the most basic things. And when I grew up, one of my biggest hobbies, not reading, was watching television. Okay. And back then, as you recall, we had like 4 channels. So everybody, pop culture was how you could connect, right? You listen to the radio, the same 5 things played on the top 40. So you knew all the same songs, the same television shows. And pop culture was, how I connected everything. Like that was my thing. So in the old days, when you do a resume and they say, what are your interests at the end? I'd say pop trivia, because you take me to Jeopardy, any pub trivia pursuit at your house. If there's a question about music, movies, or television, anytime from 1950 to 2000. Like that's my jam, because I was practically raised by
write this down, because if I ever get on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, I'm phoning you as my friend.
I'm the guy. I am the guy. And it's nuts. Even to this day, my wife will come in the room and say, "What are you doing? How many times have you seen that episode of Three's Company or whatever it is?" Like, Sanford and Son, anything. It's like, those are my jams.
So do you have a favorite? Like, do you have one that's special in your heart, like a show or a movie that fits in that genre or that time frame?
The Jeffersons would be my favorite.
The Jeffersons. Okay.
Yeah, that was not just from this. I love the humor of it, but like, no joke, like that was George Jefferson was one of the first people where, I saw the successful Black business person, and he was a bit of a role model for me growing up. I mean, having the big apartment, growing his business from one store to 8 to 12. I mean, I really took notes when I watched that. So that would probably be it.
That's it. I used to like the Jeffersons. I used to like you had mentioned Sanford and Son. I used to like all of those shows. What's Happening?
Yeah. Yep.
Then as I got older, that's when Amen and 227 and things like that. I used to love those shows.
All of those.
Also a big fan of the Honeymooners.
Me too.
To the moon, Alice.
That's right. Pow, right in the kisser. Yeah, that's right.
What was weird as you said that your taste is simple. Those shows were simple, right? You knew whatever problem they had at the beginning, whatever dilemma was going to be solved in the time that the show was going on. You knew Fred and what was Fred's son's name? Lamont.
Yeah.
Fred and Lamont they had a riff they were going to make up at the end, you knew the big one, Elizabeth, was coming, that kind of thing. And I think
catchphrases, all that stuff. That's what I loved about it.
You love it, right? The theme songs.
Yeah, that was comfort food for me, man. Like, I love that stuff. I really did. It's like, the whole thing will take place in one set. It was really simple. And because of that, back then, you could watch a show with your grandparents, with you. There's nothing that was going to embarrass anybody. There was nothing that was going to go left. And so you spent a lot of time. So that's the other part too. It's like, it was comfort food for me, but I also have a lot of memories packed in that stuff. So that would probably be it.
Now that's awesome. We could take that offline, because I can talk about those all day. Because that was my jam, right? That was right time, right space, and I actually miss that simplicity, right? It wasn't gory.
Yeah.
The A-Team, nobody died.
Nope.
Right?
Nobody got hit. They're just like
the band would go 100 feet in the air, flip over, and they would just walk out. Like,
that's it. It was a different time.
So I missed that. Okay, we know a little bit more about your taste. That's good. And you kind of hit on this a little bit. You said, like, when you're younger, your main hobbies wasn't reading. Yeah. And so I want to touch on that a little bit. So here it is. We read your bio, and you have dual degrees from Harvard. Seemingly a smart guy. You might have read a few books along the way, but it didn't sound like you were a bookworm as a child. So, help the readers that are listening, help the non-readers who are listening here, looking at you, maybe look like you, and say, he's successful. That's supposed to equal good reader or good at math or whatever. Kind of dispel that a little bit and just say, talk about your journey from grade school on to where you are today.
Yeah, growing up, when I say late bloomer, I think largely it's making the distinction between intelligence and education, right? So it's like, I think I was always a pretty smart kid. I think most of the teachers would have said so, but with paying attention in class, showing up for exams, doing homework, that kind of thing, I just could not get there. And so much of it I thought was just school, just inherently school, like sitting still, watching lectures, reading about the things that you learned during the lecture. It just didn't get there. And I would watch my mother go to these parent-teacher conferences, and that's what really broke my heart, because it was me and her. And my mother, felt like education, that's your way out. Like, you have to focus on this. And her biggest regret was that her mother, my grandmother wasn't so big on formal education. Her thing was, God bless the child who's got his own, go make your money. That's going to be the equalizer. And she was a business owner. She did her own thing. She owned real estate. She put that into her family. And almost discouraged the kids, like, waste your time there. It's college isn't for everybody. Go out and do that. Almost to the opposite extreme,
Right.
with good intent, but just in my mother's case, she actually wished that she would have been more encouraged down that path. So she kind of overcorrected with me with the opposite. School. That's right. You're going to go to college and you're going to do after school programs and you're going to, right. And it just didn't stick for a long, long time. And it wasn't anything magical that suddenly popped. I share a story in the book about some people who were influential along that path. But ultimately what it really came down to was maturity and saying, maybe that, this isn't just school being inherently defective. I mean, I've got challenges with K through 12 education like everybody else does, but maybe some of this is something that I can own. So when I committed myself to learning how to study and learning how to prepare, I found that some of the stuff that we read was actually really exciting. And some things, you'd only learn in a book because you couldn't possibly gather it all in a classroom. And around that time, I discovered a copy of the first book that made an impact on me, and that was the autobiography of Lee Iacocca, who was the former Chrysler chairman and CEO and the former president at Ford. Obviously had a huge impact on me as a car guy. I grew up in Detroit. Reading his story was like this, rags to riches kind of thing where he climbed the corporate ladder. And I was really inspired by it. My mom now seeing she's got this natural angle. Okay, maybe now he's digging. He's still not doing his homework, but he's reading a book. So let me
read something.
Right? She bought me a copy of Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun by Reginald Lewis. And
is that the guy with a
cigar?
Cigar in the front.
Yeah,
I know that.
Yeah. So he's a big, Harvard Law grad, a Virginia State alum, right down here in Petersburg, and the first essentially black self-made billionaire to build a billion-dollar enterprise, and just had tremendous impact. So then now, because I read those books, now I'm like, let me double down and read the other books that they had me doing in school because it's like these guys didn't get to where they were without it. So then it made sense. I didn't have to be pried to my homework anymore. But that's what it took, honestly. And it was just kind of discovering a couple accidental books. But growing up, I was not the kid who, when the Scholastic Book Fair came, I wasn't rushing down there to buy. I was buying posters and toys, whatever.
You saying mom and dad sent you with like a couple dollars and you're buying.
Look, it's a Lamborghini, Mom. You know how like the Pizza Hut would give you like you get a free pan pizza for reading. I never got a single one.
Man.
Half the books that are in my daughter's library I've never seen before, and some of them are 30 or 40 years old. They're classics in children's literature, but I just never read them. So it was like it was a new world for me as an adult. In fact, I took a class in college on children's literature, and people thought it was, for me, like, this is a joke class you're taking to get an easy A. It's like, actually, I haven't read it. If there was something you read in school from K through 8, I never saw it. So I'm actually going to enjoy this class.
Oh, man. Look, so that's the stuff that never gets told, right? We always, you see these memes and stuff where billionaires read 20 books every week or whatever the number is now.
Yep.
But, I think that's what's important to note is that here it is, you are successful in life, obviously have done well in corporate world, academic world, but that doesn't mean that it started with, stacks of books sitting on your table when you're 5 years old.
100%. I was talking to a kid. I was giving a talk to some high schoolers or some grade schoolers, and one of the kids was pretty fired up by it. And but he was struggling in school, and the parent was like, you pick up your books and you be like Aaron. Like, actually, he probably is just like Aaron. At that age, he's right on track.
No, and that's perfect. That's a perfect segue to what I want to talk about, because we run into kids all the time, and they're in different parts of the spectrum as far as their love and passion for reading, but they have similar interest in what you've done in life, and that's to be an entrepreneur, to start something. Yeah. It may not necessarily be a car company or go to Silicon Valley. We ran into a couple that just say, hey, I want to open up my own beauty salon. I do hair now. Yeah. I'm learning how to do it better. I would like to have my own shop and then own something. Can you, you don't have to dig too much into CarLotz if you don't want to, sure. But that path to entrepreneurship, to stepping out and doing something big, as opposed to, you could have left Harvard and said, I'm just going to work for Ernst & Young and that's it, right? Yeah. You started something.
Yeah.
Can you give some words to maybe a young person who's maybe listening, or maybe a parent who's trying to inspire the young person to do something? Like, what is that like to go from classroom or corporate world to moving to do something and building something, in this case, from scratch?
It's incredibly lonely. And I think one of the things that I encourage people to do is to get comfortable with that loneliness, because you're by definition going away from the crowd.
Right.
When I left my job to start, even before then, when I decided I wanted to sell cars, I wanted to run car dealerships. And here I am at Harvard Business School, where 90% of my class is going to go become investment bankers or consultants or venture capitalists or whatever. And then there's this one guy in the section that says, I want to go and buy a bunch of car dealerships and roll them up and do this and that. And people are like, why are you even here, bro? Like, what are you thinking about? And it was nuts. But then, 5 years after I graduated, one of my business school classmates lived here in Richmond, and that's who actually introduced me to my business partner. He says, I know this guy who knows a lot about the car space. He talked about it at HBS. So your commitment to that path can open up a ton of doors, but you have to be really all in, committed to it. And you got to be okay with the fact that by definition, you're doing something that a lot of other folks aren't. But I think that that's the exciting part, is you're more likely to find your calling by doing that, right? If you do what everybody else does, you're rolling the dice that what everybody else is doing is right for you. And that's rarely the case. It's like when you can step out and say, I'm going to go and find the thing that's right for me, you can have a lot more conviction. So I think it's great to have that conviction. For me, my career has been nothing but peace, in the sense that whether it works or not, or I make a lot of money or don't, like, I did the thing. Like, I'm not going to leave any regret on the table, because that to me was my biggest fear. My biggest nightmare was that I'd look up one day, see somebody doing something like what I thought I could do, whatever it is, going by somebody else's beauty salon, right? Going by somebody else's restaurant, and like, man, this is exactly what I was going to do. And saying, what if? It was always my biggest fear.
Yeah. And I think I love what you're saying there, because I think a lot of times, and it may be in the school system, but it might also be parents. Mm-hmm. We tend to push a specific model. We say, you're going to get good grades, go to college, and then become some employee of a company. Mm-hmm. And I remember when I was in school, the push back then was to be an engineer.
Yeah.
Engineers was the rage, right?
Yep.
Like, this is going to get you to the promised land, to be a Black engineer. Now, mind you, I was in Newport News. Hampton was right there. So there was some credence to why, they've seen that path before. But I didn't want to be an engineer. Mm-hmm. That wasn't anywhere on my radar. I was decent at math. I was decent in science, good student, but it didn't drive me. It didn't give me any passion.
Yeah.
No part of that conversation was entrepreneurship.
Right.
It was always to be an employee. And I love the fact that we have people like you who can start to stretch that conversation to being, hey, we can talk about doing other things. My son, he's into IT, like, and it's a great space. Mm-hmm. And you can say, well, my goal is to send him and get him to work at Google. Yeah. Well, or he can start his own company. And that's what right. I love what Silicon Valley has done, is it's made a lot of people see that they can do that and start it in their own basement or at home online and create something special.
I think especially for us, right? So, I mean, it's like, I think that, those paths were there. I think for a lot of folks, it was go to school to meet a bunch of people, get some ideas, grow up a bit. But for us, it was like, go, do your thing, stay on the path, get the good job. Like that, the end goal was different.
Right.
Now, by seeing more people in different spaces, you have an opportunity to say, yeah, this can be more than that, right? Like you can open up your mind to different ideas. You've got more agency than you might have thought that you had. But yeah, I was with you. I was in summer programs. For me, it was outside of Detroit. I would go to Michigan State every summer, do Fortran programming and CAD drawings, and until I was blue in the face. Until finally, it's like, this ain't what I'm gonna be doing. Like, this ain't it. Like,
I might be good at it, but I don't want it. Right?
Yeah. So
the other part, I did see in your bio though, and just to talk about like things that are, part of the traditional. You were into sports. Am I correct? I mean, you were an athlete.
Yeah.
How did that not become the path? Did your jumper started falling flat, or you didn't want to do it anymore?
I found out I was a late bloomer in sports too. My mother, her concern was that sports would be a distraction to school. So
Okay.
while she was supportive of camps and things like that, it's like when it got too serious, she'd want to put the governor on. And with football and track, it got really serious. But then it got to a point where it's like, it's not going to be a distraction, Mom, mainly because you just can't go play pickup football.
Right. You know? Pick up basketball.
Right. It's a different game. But also, you know, when it got to the point where it's like, hey, and schools might pay for this, you know, and now it's a different thing. It's like, hey, this is something that they might value. Now, if she had her preference would be, I'd rather you go not pay, even if it costs you more. Because even when you go, like, I think the sports can still be a distraction. But in my mind, it's like, you know, this is all great. If it helps save you money, any number of things you do, join the military, whatever. It's like, it's a good, if it helps you get your education, then it's a good thing. Ultimately, the choice came down to the schools that recruited me were in Harvard. And so it was like, you know, so that became the end of my sports career. And probably, you know, could have had, you know, done the walk-on thing and everything. Well, certainly could have, you know, but then it would have been a job, right? It's like, it's not paying and you're doing it, you know, you're doing it just playing. I wasn't like that about sports, but I enjoyed it. It's a big part of, it was a big part of my upbringing. It was a big part of you know, where I found passion and learned leadership and team building skills and all that stuff, and would have been fine to play for as long as I could, but just didn't have the opportunity.
And we're going to get to it in a second, but one of my favorite stories in the book was related to sports. So I'll say that in a second. But let's switch gears and talk about the book itself. Sorry, I had to put my sticky notes because I got notes everywhere. But we're going to talk a little bit more about this book, Suspend Your Disbelief. If you have not purchased a copy, go to suspendyourdisbelief.com, AaronMontgomery.com. I'm trying to think what other websites we can go to get the book. But this is the gem that we're going to talk a little bit about. And, you know, one, there's two parts that I wanted to really kind of get your thoughts on and get your words to. One, it's about the style of the book. So the book is, I'm going to do my best not to give away a lot of spoilers here. Yeah. It's a really quick read if you just flash through without doing the work in between. Yeah. But you crafted the book in chapters, like story chapters, and then you had in the middle between the chapters a place for people to reflect on what was just shared in that chapter. So talk to me a little bit, you know, as you were forming the book, as you were starting to write it, why did you use that style versus, hey, I could do a whole different book and just talk about me. Yeah. Or two, I could do this story thing and just lengthen the stories and just make the book longer. Right? Yeah. What made you get to this format?
The whole premise of writing a book based on stories was really a recollection of how I'd picked up lessons from my grandfather, my uncle, who the book is dedicated to, who passed away last year, and how they would just relate things in stories to the point where over time, if you'd spent enough time with them, you've heard all the stories that you can almost quote the punchlines to each other, right? So imagine, you know, whoever the first person that told you don't cry over spilled milk was, right? Or a watch pot never boils, or whatever expressions you had in your house. That's what it was like with my grandfather and my uncle. But those lessons were powerful, right? And you start to apply them, you start seeing the applications in different places. So when I thought about an organizing principle for the book, I said it would be great to give people some of those that have been most impactful for me. Give them some of those expressions. They're not as common as the ones that I gave. In some cases they are, but in other cases they might be a new one that you're learning. In fact, even the title of the book is an example of one. Mm-hmm. But give them that saying, and then give them a story that expounds on the idea, and then give them an image, a cartoon, if you will. Think about reading the old Far Side comics when you were a kid, back when we were kids at least.
That's right.
You get the Sunday paper and you get the colored funny pages. That's where we're trying to get those single panel comics that, you know, that just help you cement an idea. And then on top of that, since the whole point of this wasn't to say, listen to my stories because they're so awesome or because I'm so awesome. The point of the story was to say, stories can help you learn. So what are your stories? So by following up the saying, the story, and the image with a place where you can now reflect on the last half dozen stories you've read was meant to say, you think about your own application, think about the lessons that you pull up. And that to me is the most fun part, is hearing from people where either something is similar, oh, we had a similar idea, or we say this instead of that, or this reminded me of another one that you should do in your next book, like this and that. And it became a really powerful, and it reminded me that it wasn't just me learning from stories, right? We all do. I mean, you look at, most major world religions, most, how we think about, our history here in the U.S. and or more broadly speaking as humans, like a lot of it is just story upon story upon story, right? So those stories have a really powerful, it's a powerful method of educating and enlightening people, and in some cases inspiring them. So that was the idea, and I thought that structure might help me do that, and help bring the reader in.
So let's take it one step back. Then how did you come up with just writing a book? Like, you were doing other things, I'm sure. Yeah. Like now you decided to take those stories, those lessons, and put them in written format. What made you go that route?
I've been doing a bunch of speaking for about the last half dozen years. All the stuff you'd imagine, talking, strategy, how to grow a business, being a good person, whatever. Doing the adjunct thing.
That's right.
And one of my clients said, you should write a book. This is about 6 years ago. So you should write a book. I said, that's a great idea. I said, but to me, that sounded like a massive undertaking. That would require a huge team of people, resources that I couldn't possibly marshal, and a lot of time that I didn't have doing my full-time thing. And I talked about this for a long, long time to me. I mean, to a point where I pride myself on doing what I say I'm going to do, but like this became, Aaron, either do it or just shut up. Like don't talk about it.
You say a long time. We talking 8 months?
He gave me the idea 6 months ago. A couple years later, I saw him again. He said, have you written the book? I said, yeah, I'd gotten an online course, and I talked to some people who had written the book, and I'd made some steps, but nothing concrete. Okay. And then I'd done a couple other things. I told my wife, I said, I'm going to do this thing, but maybe I should just take a sabbatical and work on it when I'm not at work or something like that. And then COVID came. Well. And my wife said, man, this is your best shot. I mean, yeah, you can do a sabbatical.
Scheduled sabbatical.
Right. She said, there's two reasons that I want you to do this now. One is this is a sabbatical. I mean, this is, it's not ideal. It's not you going to Bali and writing from the beachfront, but it's like this is the time for you to press in, and this is the time when people need some inspiration. So you owe it. If you have some in you and you've got these stories, you need to commit them down. And then lastly, not only if these are stories you want to write and it's something you feel like you've got something to tell and people need it, they're actually going to have time to read it because the whole world is like now.
The whole world jeans and sweatpants.
Exactly. So you've got a captive audience. You've got people that are hungry for what you're selling, and you say that something that you've been stirred up to do. So just clean the slate, like just do it. And from that moment, I started working on this. Coincidentally, I'd started to do some outlining in December, but who knows how long that would have gone. In March, we hit the clock hard. We published some drafts and sent them around in August. And then by the end of the year, we were good. So 1 year from cover to cover, done.
Good. Yeah. Look, I'm glad you did it because, I mean, hopefully you'll never get an opportunity like COVID-19 again.
Hopefully. Yes. Yes.
None of us had that on our, what's going to happen next year bingo card. So, you mentioned the Suspend Your Disbelief. And just for folks who haven't, gotten this picture in their head already, go get the book. Normally we read in the book club, we read a lot of nonfiction, right? Mm-hmm. So we read stuff that has a historical element, it's explaining something, but very rarely do we stop and think around our inner motivations, our thoughts and processes to make the changes that we're trying to do from the stuff that we're reading. And I'm an eternal optimist, and there's one in here, and let me go ahead and get to it real quick. It is, if you can touch it, you can catch it.
Yep.
So I believe everything is possible. That may have something to do with my spiritual background. Yeah. Church, we always talk about that. It's very biblical. But there's a line here, and that I kind of put as I'm going to put this on a t-shirt.
Yeah. Nice.
If it's within my reach, it's mine. Right.
Yeah.
That's my actual physical note. It's crumbly because I've been pulling it out every once in a while.
Yep.
But just to kind of refer back to some of the story, it's really about, if you can get even close to achieving your dream, like you were talking about with your book. I mean, you were already down the path. That means you could finish it. And I think a lot of times we struggle with that, like, extra motivation to get over that hump.
Yeah.
You just mentioned something that I hadn't even planned it. I didn't think that you would say that you're going to be lonely during some processes that you're going to have in your life. And it's just, you got to get used to it.
Yeah.
Right. And so that loneliness, you got to rely on something that's inside of you to kind of help drive you to that last leg, and maybe even like halfway, depending on the process. So, stories like that are really important. There's a bunch of them here we can get into. Again, I said I wasn't going to get into too many spoilers. But is there a favorite story? There's one in here that kind of resonates with you that you would say, like, man, that's my chapter right there. That's the one.
The one you mentioned is one of them. There's a couple that that one's one because it kind of speaks to what we were just talking about, like what you learn playing sports, right? I mean, that was a football coach. My coach passed away some years back. He died way too young, but this is a guy who turned around the team. We were like 2-7 1 year, and 3 years later, he's got teams competing for the state championship. Like speaking largely just because of his ability to inspire and motivate people. But the thing that he was inspiring me on and coaching me on that day was pretty straightforward. It was just the idea that, I was running a route. Aaron go run an 8. I gave it all I had. The quarterback had more arm than I had legs. I missed the ball, but it did bounce off my fingertip. And the coach says, Aaron, and he's yelling at me. And I'm like, yell at your boy. He overthrew me. I was giving it everything. He says,
Culpepper that thing.
Right? Like, hit the numbers, bro. Like, put it in the basket. And he says, no, you touched it. So that means you could have caught it. That means you were there. It's like, man, like this notion of if you touch it, you can catch it, was like, that's it. It was not only, it was simple, it was clear, but not only was it this inspiration that, go reach out for more, it was that there's no excuse, right? It's even the things that you don't think you could catch, you don't have to catch it. You just got to touch it. And ergo, if you can touch it, you actually can catch it. It was this really trippy thing that opened up a lot of things for me. So now when I look at my life, there are a lot of times when people told me, there's no way this will work out. There's no way you'd ever be a car dealer. No one would ever give you a chance. There's no way you could do this. It's like, I'm just done counting. It's like, I don't even hear it. It's just like, if anybody can do it, then you can do it, right? Like, it's just, if it can be done, why not you? And if you can touch it, you can catch it. So that was actually one of the more, that became like a mantra that I would actually live by. I think the other one is part of what led me to write the book. And this was something I got from a business school professor. And that was good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment. And for me, this is a guy, he was a Fortune 500 CEO. He was a big partner at McKinsey, a Harvard Business School professor, just a very successful person. But that was the first time I'd ever heard somebody give me permission to not be right? Like, you can fail. That's the only way you can get good judgment. The reason I know so many things is what he would say, is like, because there's a lot of things written down. And it's like, wow. So now your failures, you're not afraid of them. They're empowering because they're going to make you that much more knowledgeable. And that changed the whole game for me. It's like, oh yeah, I'm going to do everything now because I'm never going to lose. I'm either going to win or I'm going to learn. And if I learn, then I'm more likely to win. So I'm going to do everything. And that was huge for me.
And that's a great point. And I'm wondering where that comes from. There are us feeling like we have to be right or make the right decisions all the time. Do you think that's a history of the punishment for making the wrong decisions? Is it, the constant reminder from people around us saying that we need to make the right decision all the time, because of some fear or just because of that's the way you were taught? Like, where do you think that comes from, that piece of it?
Your idea actually is one that I would like to probe some more, and that is when you have a cultural history where someone else's failures are held up to you and you're shown, see, Demetrius, he tried that and he failed. Right. Learn your lesson, right? Whatever it is, like, see, Demetrius, last night Aaron tried to run away. Now he's back here. He's on the log. He's getting flogged all day. Think about that. right? Like, how do you think about trying something new? How do you feel about taking a risk when somebody else's failure is held up as an example to you to staying within your place? Put that over hundreds of years, like that's got a very powerful effect. Combined with the fact that all of us generally, even without having a history of shared trauma, have an aversion to stepping outside of the pod, right? If you go to a line and you see everybody going this way and you're going that way, you're going to stop and say, I must be going the wrong way. Right? So I think if you take that compounded with this shared trauma where, it's where every time you step out of line, you're knocked back in, on top of the fact that we're predisposed to want to stay in line as human beings. I think it's especially hard to step out. I think we talk about failures and decompress failures and deconstruct failures way more often than we think about successes. I was talking about this recently. What's the kid from the Knicks that was fighting Jake Paul, the short guy?
Nate Robinson.
So Nate goes in, gets knocked out. Like, everybody's his boy all the way up. Everybody's his boy. Like, this is great. We love Nate. Like, Nate's an awesome athlete. He gets knocked out. He's in the sleepy time position, and he gets dragged. It's like, who's going to want to be a boxer? You're either going to be like, you're the greatest, or like the second you slip up, like they're doing the same thing to McGregor, right? It's like, the guy who's the greatest, he's a bum. Like, that's hard. You have to have a lot of self-direction, intestinal fortitude to say, I actually don't care what y'all think. I'm going to go do this because this is how it goes. So I think that's really hard, and kind of ties back to what we were talking about at the top of the call, where you have to get really used to that. Like, the concept of, when people are on your side, you can't let it gas you up. And when they're not, you can't let it get you down.
It's amazing to that point, like how much we highlight, even when the people have failed, when we want to just talk about, let's say, use Michael Jordan as an example. Mm-hmm. You watch the tape, you would think that man never missed a shot ever in his life. Like, right. We all talk about the success. And then we say, you should be like Michael Jordan. And so inherently what we're saying indirectly is that you should never miss a shot, because we didn't roll the tape on the times that he didn't hit the buzzer beater or he didn't play well. Yep. There's a reason why he didn't average 50 points a game for his career, because he missed some shots along the way. And then we also don't do a good job of celebrating some of the ones who win continuously, but they didn't get enough fame. So, staying in the basketball realm, I think about Robert Ory, right? Mm-hmm. He's never going to be anybody's top 5, top 10, top 100. No. The guy made some consistent shots. He was a great player over time. And, even that would have said, hey, you don't have to be the greatest, but you can still do great things by just being consistent and taking your shot.
The concept of, like, just letting history kind of revise whatever happened and just focus on whatever it wants is a troubling one for me, because, to your point, growing up in Detroit, 86, 85, 86, 87, 88, Michael Jordan's a ball hog. He won't pass to anybody. Like, he's so selfish. He only cares about himself. He's a bum. He's a crybaby. Now, 6 championships, right? Like, he's awesome. But, like, I remember in real time, like, and it wasn't just Detroit fans and stands saying this. This was like a lot of people. He'll never get over the hump. He's too selfish. He's too this. He's too that. Then it turns around. It's awesome. Like, he's got 6 rings. He's the GOAT. I think it's revisionist. It's not accurate. If you were there, it's a mixed bag. He's a good player who had some success and some failures, but he needed the failures to have the success. But that's just not the way the story gets told.
No. Unfortunately, because I think trying to live up to that kind of hype, to try to be that type of player in any sport or any even in the business world, to try to be, well, you should just be like Bill Gates. Well, you should be Steve Jobs.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So if I remember right, Steve Jobs failed.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But we like to talk about that piece and how they got up, but not, talk about how many times they fell down.
Yep.
So I love the book, love the style and format. And I encourage anyone who's going to read the book to not flash through it. Take the time with each of the chapters to kind of soak it in. Maybe put the book down and really think about your life, the application of the stories and lessons that's being told. So I think there's something in there that you can gain, not only from that, but also reflection on yourself as a person. I think we were talking about this in the group. We don't reflect enough. You know, I think we do beat up on ourselves. We do push towards our plans, but we don't step back and say, you know, what am I really good at? What's going well in my life and those kinds of things? What lessons have I learned along the way? So I talked about my favorite stories, talked about the book, and we stand over the book. When you coming out with the next one?
You know, it's you just said it with this opportunity. There's so much, obviously, so much pain and suffering that's come from COVID, but being able to find an opportunity in that it was a very cathartic experience, especially, you know, being able to finish the project after my uncle had passed away from COVID. It was just like, it was almost like, you know, I wonder now, you know, what the next swing would be. And knowing me, this was difficult, like learning an entirely new thing, an entirely new discipline, partnering with people that I didn't know about, you know, doing a whole other thing. I would actually want to push it further into something that's even more uncomfortable, right? So maybe I go back and double back on some of the things that I was a little bit nervous to do this time because I didn't want to appear presumptuous, or I didn't want to. But now I've got all this feedback from people. I've got readers. I've got an audience. I can better tailor the next message. So I say all that to say that what's really interesting to me about this is that until last year I wasn't an author, right? Like, right? Like,
now you are.
So these weren't things I was thinking about 2 years ago or 3 years ago. It was all about getting there, doing the project. Now it's done. It's like, you're an author. So now the way you think about it, the way you can engage as an artist and try to think about what you want this art to be is pretty interesting. So I think even just sitting with that concept for a bit is going to be exciting. Like, right, you know, see where you're led, see where you think you have a unique insight, and see where you can have impact, which is really why I wrote this to begin with. It wasn't an ego play. It wasn't a victory lap. It was really, I think I can help kids have a different perspective, or people generally, and I wanted to share something with them.
Yeah, you didn't write this book to be an ego play, because you wrote some stuff in there that was a little vulnerable.
Not to write down. That's right.
If you wanted to write a book that says an ego play, you write some Rudy Giuliani, like, you know, biography. You write that type of book. You don't write this book.
Yeah.
But we really enjoyed the book. I think it's something that, you know, a lot of people can pick up, read it, share it with others. I do also like the fact that it's, you know, we can use it as a bridge, and I'm being a little selfish here, but use it as a bridge between our young men and our adults, right? Mm-hmm. This is not something that's like way over the head of, you know, it's a teenager, but it's something we can have as a common ground and common conversation to talk about some of these main things here. So I do want to ask a couple things before we get wrapped up.
Yeah.
But I do have some fun questions to kind of get us towards that drum roll in. So I'm going to ask you some pairs. I'm going to give you two things to choose from. You're going to give me your only one answer. You cannot say both or neither.
No
you
problem.
Gotta pick one.
No problem.
I pick ones that you actually know something about. I did not pick Sanford and Son versus the Jeffersons. Now, if I knew that information, I would have had some before. But
that would have been hard to choose. But I think I can do it.
That would have been hard, but you know, at least you could get it. There's no time limit, so you could tell me why you pick one or the other. Okay. But I want to start with something that's been on the debate in the barbershop floor for a long time, and I'm twisted a little bit. I'm gonna say Kobe or LeBron.
Ooh, man, you came pretty strong out of the gate.
Yeah, let's swing for the fences. Let's go.
Yeah. I will take LeBron. I love Kobe. Love Kobe. Like, absolutely Kobe. But you know, Kobe is a carbon copy of Michael Jordan. Like the moves, the walk, the knee band, everything. Right? Like that's him. And he was a pretty good copy, but that's what it was. LeBron's his own thing. And to be able to take that Cleveland team, you know, against the Golden State Warriors, like, I don't think Kobe has a thing like that, or had a thing like that on his resume, Sand Shack and everything. So for me, like, that's the fact that LeBron's his own prototype. Don't get me wrong. I mean, he's lost more than he won, so that's another. That's why the debate gets so heated. But I think for me, it's a challenge, because Kobe is. We've seen that before, and when we saw it before, it was frankly better. With LeBron, you've never seen it before, and dude's almost 40 and still playing, still playing at peak levels. And it's
the one thing I do remember from Sir Michael Jordan is that when he got towards the end of his career, he had a hard time, getting above the rim. He wasn't Air Jordan anymore.
Yeah.
LeBron is still getting basketballs to the backboard,
and that's without the 2 years off for baseball and starting 3 years earlier or 2 years earlier because he came straight out of high school. So it's to me, this is just watching him is like, wow, this is a whole other cut for the league.
So I love him. We're gonna take it out of the sports realm and go a different route. Martin or Malcolm?
This one's hard. Now that we've got so much history, unpacking the complexities of both sides. If I were to pick one, I'd pick Malcolm. Frankly, because I felt like he was, and I think his role was different than Martin's. I think Martin was able to unify, pull people together, have an impact and drive change, even if it was incremental change relatively.
Okay.
But I felt like Malcolm, when you look at those interviews, him, James Baldwin, Dick Gregory, Harry Belafonte, it's just penetrating stuff. Stokely Carmichael, where it's like, wow, like this, you need to hear this stuff, even if you wasn't able to get any laws passed or any, integrated any houses or anything like that. Like he said the stuff that you needed to hear and think about. And for me, I tend to ponder that stuff more because he was able to speak about it so unapologetically. When you look at some of his old interviews, when he was on the news, as just even just a talking head representing during his time with the nation, during his time after, just always had some really insightful points and ultimately might have limited his impact. But for me, the power of his words and his insights was really great. So I think I get that the edge on that vector for sure.
Okay. I'll take it. I think Malcolm definitely had a different start.
I think honestly,
they wound up getting a lot closer than people realize than you would have guessed if you just said, "Hey, let me take early Martin, early Malcolm, and let's see if they'll be friends or anywhere close in philosophy at the end." And I think
the underdog thing is part of the appeal to me too, though. The fact that he was able to come from where he did and have such a remarkable transformation to me is like that was really powerful. That was another one of those early reads for me. The autobiography of Malcolm X was one of the few books, in that K-8 period where I read that and devoured it and was grateful for the opportunity, just learning about his life. And not long after, when the film came out with Denzel, it was like, yeah, this is real.
It wasn't a small book either. That wasn't a
no, it was
well-written book, but it wasn't a small one.
Yeah.
All right, so let's see what your other philosophical leans would be: sunrise or sunsets?
Sunrise.
Yeah, that was an easy one.
The start of a day is like there's nothing like it. It's just it's full of possibilities. Love a sunset. Love being able to reflect on it, enjoy it with people. It's beautiful. They're both obviously very beautiful. That's the challenge of these. But for me, the possibilities that start with the beginning of the day, it's just there's nothing like that. If I can beat the sun up and see it, that's my favorite part of the day.
All right, so now this is where I get you in trouble. I got two more, and I don't know if you'll discredit your street cred here, but do you call them sneakers or tennis shoes?
Sneakers for me.
I was going to say, I don't know. New York can say tennis shoes. They're like, we're going to play tennis.
No, it's their sneakers.
Yeah. All right, last one. Sugar or salt and pepper in your grits?
This one's I'll just piss off everybody, but sugar all day. And if it didn't belong in grits, then then we wouldn't keep having this debate.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Aaron Montgomery. Thank you for coming. Appreciate you coming.
Yep, that's one where I'm like, and I'll be me against the world. Fight me on it. I'm the only one in the family that does it that way. I'm the only one. I mean, anywhere we go out, I'm that guy at whatever restaurant. I'm down in New Orleans. where, you know, down there, the grits have like crawfish and stuff, and they want all, you know, very savory. And I'm like, I just have the plain grits. And bought this
you went to New Orleans and you had sugar in your grits?
In front of
if anybody from New Orleans watches this at any point, we apologize for exporting our Virginia talent.
Miss, can you take the shrimp out? I just want more shrimp. Yep.
Oh man. I don't even know where to go with that one. You been down? Oh.
Yep.
Anyway, okay. I said we're gonna get you in trouble, but hopefully we'll see what happens.
No, those are loaded. That's what. Yeah,
those are very loaded.
That's what I'll fight for. And I want this piece to get recorded and played because I know there are other people out there, and I know that you too. There are people that are afraid.
People are afraid to say.
Enjoy your sugar grits.
All right. We are a book club. We read books. Some more than others. Some a lot. Some a little. But what would be one great read? What was your last great read? Let me pose it that way. Last book, other than your book, because it's a great read. But was a good read that you would put on somebody's to be read list that was maybe your last one? It may be a while ago, doesn't matter. One
book that I recommend to just about everybody in the world now is called The Art of Thinking Clearly by I think it's Adolfo Rovelli. And it's a book that goes through all the different ways, you know, that you have these logical fallacies that your brain takes in information and skews it. I've read this book 4 or 5 years ago, recommended it to I used to buy it as Christmas gifts. I would just buy a bunch of copies and give them to people because I thought it was that powerful. People would read them, keep it on their nightstand, loved it. Everybody raves about this book. But especially right now, when you look at what's going on in the world, how misinformation is being presented, how people are doing their own research and drawing invalid conclusions or not following a scientific process. It's really powerful to see how your brain can betray you and lead you down a pretty dark path just because it wants to find harmony or it wants to resolve conflict. So that for me is a powerful read. It's one that, you know, I reread every couple of years. And it's just a great book. So The Art of Thinking Clearly would definitely be it. That's one where if there is a skill that I could develop and enhance, it would be to think more clearly. and
state the author's name again.
It's his last name's Dobelli. I can't remember his last name. Dobelli. Okay.
Good. All right. So we get ready to wrap up. I saw a couple comments come in. They are praying for you and your grit situation. The sugar don't go on grits. Lord help him. We got people sending prayers.
It goes on mine.
To pray for your soul. So we love that they are so supportive of you. But one question did come in. I wanted to kind of give that to you, and then we can go on to the last close. If you have any questions, make sure to put it in the chat, and we'll make sure to get it on the board. Do you recommend journaling while reading this book was the question. So for those who haven't read it, don't have a copy of it, he did leave space at the end of each chapter, and this is not spoiling anything.
No, not at all.
There's a spot for insights.
Yeah.
So it just depends on, I think, on how you want to take that question, but feel free to answer it in your way.
Yeah, everything in the book was deliberate. So even the framing of the word insights, right? The little 3D glasses on the cover, as you can even see here, like everything was, because the whole concept of suspension of disbelief, when you put on those 3D glasses, you see a different thing. Like that's the point, right? So by journaling, when you can capture your ordinary everyday life experiences in a journal, sometimes you'll look back and you'll have a different lens on those same experiences from when you journal. This can happen from reading, this can happen from decompressing your day, this can happen from just journaling generally. So I'm an advocate of journaling generally for those reasons, because that was really what inspired the book, was to be able to go back and look back at real things that had happened with a different lens. I'm not in those experiences anymore. Now I'm looking back at the time that my mom had me repaint my room, or the time I dropped the ball during practice or whatever. And it's like, you have a different experience. So like, that's where that stuff comes from, is if you don't capture your experiences, this goes back to what you're saying, Demetrius, we don't reflect enough.
Yeah.
But it's hard to reflect because we typically only remember the beginnings of things, the middle and the end. When you journal, you've got more content, you've got more things to deliberate on and reflect on. So it actually makes that exercise more powerful. So yes, I would recommend journaling throughout. I tried to make it a little bit easier with some space in the book, but I don't think it's enough. If I had my druthers, if I were to do it again, I'd probably pair the book with a journal to make it even easier.
And the nice thing about journaling, and it's a great question that was added in there. When journaling, you can take your insights from different places. So you may have had an experience with someone, you may have read a book, like in this case, or you may have read multiple books, and you just pull it all together. That journal becomes like a one-stop for all of that. But in this case, for this specific book, it may be your insights specific to that chapter that I think are really helpful. Yeah. I did my best to not write in the book because I tend to give the book away and buy myself another one. But these will be definitely handouts for folks to spark conversation. I think this is one of those books that works well for that type of interaction.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
We can definitely grow, learn, and learn from one another, but also learn about ourselves in these contexts. So with that said, we got more prayers coming in for you, but we'll talk about that another time.
Remember what I said, you got to be comfortable being lonely.
It sounds like you're on this island by yourself. I know I'm not there.
You got to be comfortable.
I went down to New Orleans and told them that. But thank you so much for coming on. Remember, for everyone who's in here, Suspend Your Disbelief, Aaron Montgomery. Go check out the book. Go to suspendyourdisbelief.com, aaronmontgomery.com. You can go anywhere and find this book and get yourself a copy. 1, 2, 3. Christmas is right around the corner. Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Thanksgiving. Give out books wherever you go, and this will be great conversation starters. Just remember that the sugar on grits is not a chapter here. Okay? It is not.
The next book will be called
that book.
That would be the title of the next one.
Rolls on grits. And there'll be half the country that will refuse to buy it just because of principle alone. All right. So just one last question. What's next for you? Like, what's the next big thing, little thing? What's on your plate?
I've been so encouraged by how it felt to have time to explore an idea and then birth something like this book. I want to do the same thing with some business ideas. When we founded CarLotz, my partner had taken some time off of his job and had spent 6 or 12 months thinking about ideas, and that was one of the ones that he had. And it just shows you how powerful that time when you just create space to reflect. You don't have to be a genius, you don't have to be Einstein, you don't have to be Thomas Edison, but things happen. So I want to give some space to that. And I really want to give some space around marrying commercial opportunities with underserved people, in this case, specifically formerly incarcerated people who are who've been involved in the criminal justice system. So I've got a bunch of ideas that I want to explore, a bunch of allies to help me think through it. And I'm hopeful that with some time, who knows, another great project can come out of that we can talk about next time.
Yeah, we got some people already starting to buy the book. So
awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
That's right. You can help fund your next endeavor. That's a very worthwhile endeavor, especially for the ones that are coming in trying to find, what's their next step in life. They may be trying to turn the corner. Absolutely. And just looking for some path to having a successful life in general. All right, so we told them where to buy the book. They're starting to buy the book. That's awesome.
Thank you.
For those of you who have bought the book or going to buy the book, we'd love to have a little book chat. Maybe we can kind of share some ideas and thoughts. Maybe send some feedback to Aaron about his book and get him sparked up to write the next one. But Aaron Montgomery has been our special guest for this evening. We thank you so much for joining us. And if you have one last word you want to say, the floor is yours.
I'm going to go have some grits, but I want to thank you.
Everybody, text his wife, tell him, get rid of the grits, take him out of the house.
But thank you so much. This is what it's all about. I mean, what we're doing tonight, we're just sharing stories, and this is what it's all about. The whole point of the book was to just, you know, have a dialogue, right? It wasn't just me talking to an audience. It was hopefully to build a dialogue, inspire people to share their stories back, and kind of pay it forward. So I really appreciate this opportunity. Hope that you all who have purchased it enjoy it. But really, thank you so much, Demetrius. This was awesome.
I appreciate your time, and thanks everyone for joining in. If you're going to watch this video, maybe not at the live, but maybe watch it later, make sure to check out Aaron Montgomery. Make sure to buy the book, and make sure to start that conversation in your local area, your community, your household, and maybe even at the job. This book is well worth the trip. Suspend Your Disbelief, Aaron Montgomery. Go pick it up, and hopefully everyone has a wonderful evening. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.